All right, guys, back here at Express Auto again, playing with Casey Strider's Toyota pickup. We mentioned in the teardown video how the wear in the front of the stator support was pretty deep. You notice there's some grooving in it, some weird chatter marks from the pump and the pump slide. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn this thing on, make a face cut, get the flatness back on the pump itself. One of the biggest things on 4L60s is pump warpage. We'll get both sides perfectly flat to where whenever it's bolted together, it can be true to each other. So there we go. Let's start with just a small face cut. As you can see, there's light and dark spots in the cut. That's where the pump surface is warped. There we are. Just like that, we've got a nice resurfaced pump and ready to go another 100,000 miles. All right, guys, we're back again with Casey's Toyota. This thing has just been an adventure all the way around. Right now, we've got our new Durabond pump bushing. A lot of guys use Babbitt bushings still and use the white Teflon coated bushings. Those are good bushings, don't get me wrong, but we really like the way that the Durabond bushings fit. We love the way that they last, the way that they carry oil. They are a great bushing and we really love that bushing. So we're gonna use Durabond bushing, new front seal. We've got our pump slide in place. We've already checked the tolerance on the pump slide. We've got our hardened pin in, everything's ready to go. We're using the Sonax Performance Pack, which for you guys that are in this industry, you know what this kit does, you know what this kit is about. For guys that aren't and guys that are trying to get into it, trying to learn, trying to do good stuff, the Sonax Performance Pack is one of the best kits on the market, in my opinion. I've been using it for quite a while now and have had great luck, great success. More positive shift, a more complete transmission overhaul. The things that this kit does for the transmission overall is just phenomenal. Guys at Sonax have really taken their time. They've really put a good kit together, and they've really worked and strived to make sure that the transmission industry can better itself and deliver a better product. For a guy that's going to be out abusing his Toyota pickup and thrashing it, and throwing it in the mud, and acting like it's a big Tonka toy, this is what you want. This is the kit. If you guys want one of these things, like, share, subscribe, comment on here. Let me know. We'll get you guys one of these boxes in the mail. Not a bad product at all. And the price point on these things is very reasonable. In that kit comes this beautiful purple spring. It's a high rev spring for the pump slide. Some guys will use channel locks, vice grips, or anything else like that to put this thing in. I prefer to do it the old-fashioned method of just squeeze the spring, get her started, and just push her on in. Sometimes you gotta use a little persuader. Biggest thing is pump spring needs to be square. If that thing's cockeyed or crooked or something like that, she's gonna give you problems. Next, we're gonna install our pump rotor. We've got our guide plate installed. Make sure you put your tangs on the right spot. Very important on a 4L60, hardened pump rings. For you guys that have been in this industry for a while, you know how these things like to explode and cause all kinds of fun problems. We like to use the Transgo hardened pump rings. We'll start putting that thing in there. After that, we'll get the vanes in and get it all bolted together. We'll show you guys a little bit more of the pump as it's final assembled and start air checking our drums and seeing if we know what we're doing or not. Next, we'll get all our vanes in place and now, once we've got our pump assembled, get our last hardened ring in the top. One very, very important step to any pump assembly is oil. That pump doesn't need to be dry. And if you're gonna put a pump together and stick her in the back of that transmission and fire that motor up, you don't want her to fire up dry. Nobody likes a dry start, so we like to use a little bit of fresh Dextron 3 during our assembly, and now we'll start bolting her together. Some guys use a band for lining up their pump halves, and some guys use a jig. There's all kinds of different apparatuses and theories and operations out there to make this all work the way it's supposed to, but I was taught a little differently, and poor man has poor ways. If you got good eyes, you can eyeball the two sides, run a feeler gauge down and run your square straight edge in. Make sure your pump halves are lined up, and then we'll torque her down. We had the gauge block out for checking our reverse input drum. I like to use the gauge also for checking the pump sides for squareness before we torque it. If you get one side like that side right there, it's out just a hair, you can finagle it just a little bit, just like that, and square it up. Once it's square, we'll start torquing bolts. I like to get them just to where they're snug, not torqued, snug, and recheck your pump. As long as your pump is nice and square, we'll continue moving forward. You need to check this thing in multiple spots too. Don't just check it in one spot, because you're on one spot on one side doesn't mean it's square all the way around. If we're square, torque all the pump bolts to the manufacturer spec. A lot of guys will run them down with an impact or just grab a ratchet or whatever they got handy. You want to do it right? Buy yourself a torque wrench. Buy a good torque wrench. Keep your torque wrench up to date. Torque your bolts. Now, we're going to use the sun shell that we took out. We put the way better sun shell in. This is just the old nasty ugly one. What we're going to do is we're going to clean it up just a little bit. We're going to use this as a stand. Sonak's instructions will tell you how to do this for you guys at home that want to do this. Get your pump set on there. We're going to put our reverse input drum on. We're going to air check the clutches in it, and then we're going to air check our input drum. Just like so. Depending on which one you guys are using, we'll have a wet air test area and a dry air test area and different types of air test areas. So what we like to do is we'll put this on the reverse input drum, put the reverse input drum on the pump, stand it up on the shell, find the reverse section, we'll put some air to it, see, clutches are working the way they're supposed to. One thing you want to make sure of is whenever you're air testing your reverse input drum, follow the instructions. Make sure you have no air blowing out of the torque signal. If you have a big leak right here, your pump is not flat. It needs to be machined. It needs to be squared. Some guys don't believe that. Some guys like to do it a different way. But if it's assembled correctly and both sides are flat, you'll have no leak. Now we're going to get our input drum out. We set this aside earlier. We're going to put our selective washer on the back. This one we're using a number 68, or number 70, excuse me. Using a number 70 Torrington bearing. Put our reverse input drum on it. Slide our pump into place, like so. You can put this on either way, as long as it stands up like that. And notice your shaft doesn't touch the bench. Now we can air test this guy, see what we've got. If we've done what we're supposed to have done, these clutches will apply, forward clutches will apply, overrun clutches will apply. We'll have us transmission ready to assemble. Forward clutch comes on right here. You'll notice that when the forward clutch applies, our 3/4 clutches are still free. If you air test it and your 3/4 clutches aren't free, you've got a bigger problem. Go back. You did something wrong. Come over to our 3/4 clutch. Notice how nice and smooth she applies. Some guys are out there saying, man, that didn't move hardly at all. What we're going to do, figure out what.
Just use those until you find your other ones.
Good call. We're going to get our calipers up here. We're not going to use a dial indicator in this case just because we're just going to show you guys just a brief apply here. $13.5. Well, didn't zero. Try this again here. 19 thousandths. I like to see our clutches between 15 to 20 thousandths. You can get away with a 22, 23, but I like to see them between 15 to 20. So everything air test right. Our drum seals nice. I think we're ready to assemble this guy. We'll be back with a short video, getting the rest of it in the transmission.